Okay, we can start.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, dear learners. We are block 2 and unit 16 and Jews diaspora that we are going to discuss today. We have dealt about when you are learning on the history of diaspora community. The history that took place is among the Jews community. So today the learning that we are going to have is how the Jews as a prototypic diaspora, how they become the kind of main aspect of the or the genesis of diaspora community, and how this Jews diaspora has various dimensions, as well as how as a victim diaspora. Okay, and we are going to also learn the connectivity of this diaspora community between the Jews, Christianity, and Islam, and the various demographic distribution of Jews diaspora across the globe, across the countries, and we also learn about the anti-Semitism and Zionism, which is the counterpart of the or of the Jews diaspora, and the creation of Israel, what the war is currently is going on. Mm, the homecoming, the creation of Israel, how they created the country called Israel for the people of belong to Jewish community, and how the post-Israel, post-Zionism, and new Jewish diaspora. So this is what the main content we are going to deal while we are while we are discussing on this paper. Very important to for the learners to understand the Jewish diaspora community. So let us understand the objective of this paper by understanding the history and characteristics of Jewish diaspora and distinguish between the Jews and the growth of anti-Semitism and what is anti-Semitism, and understand the context of the Jews migration in different parts of the geographical, why they have migrated, what is a push and pull factor, and how we have to familiarize ourselves with the condition under which Israel, Jews' homeland, was created. So, as I have said in the earlier units, the basic concept of migration and formation of diaspora was discussed. When we are discussing that itself, we have discussed about the concept of Jewish community. And when we are discussing about the diaspora, we also understand about the concept of national politics, the citizenship, and policy making. How these are the main content when we are dealing on the diaspora community. So, how these factors. So, the main areas of these sorry for it for the pause, and policy making in the home and host countries plays a vital role. Now you see that in US the illegal immigrants are going to send back to India, and India has agreed for the new policy that has been come by the US government under Donald Trump. So this is what we have to learn. It's a live examples that we are undergoing right now. So, the Jews diaspora, when you are talking about the Jews diaspora, which is the earliest and the oldest of the all the ethnic diasporas. When you say the term ethnics, it I am from a particular ethnic community. For example, from Kerala, they called Malayalis, so they have some ethnic community. they have certain culture. So these Jewish communities are the ethnic part, and uh, how to say, very basic element and something like. Do you have any issues? Okay, right. So when we have deal with the history of Jewish diaspora, it can be divided into three distinctive phases that we need to understand. And that is the first one is a biblical phase. So when we read about the biblical phase, that also considered as an the ancient phase, or the we have and we have the medieval and modern phase. So biblical phase or the ancient phase is the characterized when the birth of Judaism or Christianity and resulting the friction between these predominant religion. You see this when the Christ was born, the he is a Jew. Okay, by birth Christ is the Jew. He's a Jewish. Okay, and after his death and their beliefs on resurrection, the Christianity started. So we know the history that Second World War and all those things. There are a lot of Jews were killed, and Judaism and Christianity, and this leads to the friction of the these prominent religion. So that also leads to, with the coming of Islam, the scenario gets more complicated because of the struggle between these religions they gone through. So they were very uh, uh, in a position to uh, or they went to the extremes level to propagate their religion and convert and make the people to follow the religion. So this is the history where this community were fighting against to proclaim their religion and make the people to convert to the religion. So this the struggle between these religions with the wide with each other for the control of Jerusalem, the Holy Land, for all these three religions. We should understand that Judaism for Jews, for Christianity, and for Islam community. For these three religions, Jerusalem is the only one where they can claim as a holy land. So in the medieval phase, for from fall of Roman Empire to the rise of Ottoman Empire, religion continued to dominate the public space with the political powers trying to capture Jerusalem. So we need to understand this biblical or ancient period where there is a lot of struggle to capture the Jerusalem, the Holy Land of between these three predominant religion. So religious conversion forms the main theme for the period. So how far we are converting? Because if for a particular religion, for example, religion A to religion B, if the person converts, then it shows a strength. So it shows their population is high. So they can fight against the who is the numbers or less. So this was the condition during that time. So in the medieval phase, this was the fight. And when you take the modern phase, this is the phase when, on the other hand, coincides with the development of anti-Semitism. That is in the late 19th century to 20th century, or and the counter-Jews movement of has started, and the phase. culminates with the mass of prosecution of Jews, especially Hitler started doing it during the Nazi regime in Germany. So this lead to the new Jewish diaspora. Okay. So please understand when we learn about the Jewish community, they are in population or less. Even you find uh, in even in India there are some Jews very 0.1 percentage or something very little meager amount of Jewish communities are there in even in India. And Jerusalem, Israel is the only land for the people who belong to Jewish community, and this leads them to move to various parts of the country. So this phase culminates the the prosecution was done in the Second World War, especially killing the people of the Jewish community, so that the Christianity has can emerge as a higher level. And so the reasons in the post-globalized world with the de-terrorization is a key concept. So now the terrorism has due through law, the terrorism has stopped, so that Jewish community started uh, establishing their land or involving in life peacefully. So the common theme that is during all phases is the continuous mass migration of Jews from one part of the world to another, and their state of homelessness and statelessness. So their level is always a homelessness because uh, they started migrating and they don't have the homeland. They only have the host land. They are aslam to various parts of the country, and they are often leveled as a victim diaspora. Yeah. So they are forced. They are all victim. The victim diaspora means they are forced. They didn't migrate voluntarily. They are not skilled labor. Rather, they are forced to migrate because of the condition is worsening in their homeland. And they were prosecuted and discriminated by other religious and political powers. And in fact, when we talk about this, the various phases, the history of Jews diaspora is one of uh, starting from the captivity and the exile and they alienate, then they are isolated. So some scholars feel that the constant migration, struggle, and strife have given the Jewish diaspora a distinct shade of resilience, enterprise, and entrepreneurship. So they want to establish, so they have the resilience. They started that we should live and the resilience in a simple term that we should not give up. Okay, we should fight, we should emerge, we should not lose our ethnicity. So these are the resilience started taking place. This is a kind of Darwin's theory, like survival of the fitness, where they started that kind of ethnic diaspora community. So the enterprise and entrepreneurship, they started and they started earning money. So this is the history. This is the various phase when we are talking about the phase of Jewish diaspora. And the themes in Jewish diaspora, when we talk about, and even before that, we need to also talk the biblical period when we talk about the Jewish dispersal. Dates during the back to the biblical period. The Old Testament warns Jews that those who deviate from religious laws will be dispersed in various parts of the world and will lead a life of suffering and deprivation. So this is the biblical period. That means when you see Christianity, that is called Old Testament and New Testament. That means Old Testaments are written before Christ, and New Testaments is during and after the death and resurrection of Christ. There's a New Testament, and in the New Testament you have gospel and everything. So this is a biblical period. When they see about the biblical period, this is the Old Testament. Jews are in the Old Testament, and when even in the biblical period, we have the New Testament when Jesus and his life and talks about. And so when you talk about these biblical terms, it says that when Old Testament that wants the Jews that those who deviate from religious laws will be dispersed in various parts. So we come across the word diaspora. Okay. This is the term we are taking from the dispersed in various parts. So this diaspora comes from the biblical term dispersed. Okay. In the present meaning. So in the Greek translation of the Bible with reference to Jews, with forms a constant theme here. So here, when we take about the ancient language of Jews, has an equivalent word diaspora that means like gola, that galt meaning or punishment or exile. So move from one place to another. So this reference to Jews for expulsion. So the diaspora term itself, it's referred to the Jews community in the beginning, and the exact reference is from the biblical term. This expulsion from their chosen land means that they are forced to move from, expelled from their chosen land, which was promised in the prophet Moses. So before the birth of the Jesus Christ, and so the ancient time, Jerusalem and Palestine were the thriving centers where Judaism and Christianity prospered. Okay, so this Jerusalem and Palestine. Now Palestine is full of Muslims, and the Jerusalem is full of Jews. And so Judas Iscariot betrayal of Christ and the role of Jews in helping Romans in Christ crucifying has become a Christian theology. So they started that. We know that uh, Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples of Jesus Christ. So there are 11, 12 disciples. With Jesus is 13, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus, means that he was the one who showed this is Jesus Christ. So the authority, the Jewish community has crucified him. So this is we can take as a history or it's a belief of Christianity. But so this Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus, is from the Jewish community. So they have the Christian theology speak that, so they are against Christianity. So it was for those reasons that the Jews were looked upon with suspicion and in a Christian world, and we could neither repent nor be reprived. Okay, so this is the issue when we deal about the problem. So as a result of the stigma of sin, scattering, repentance got attached to them and were stereotyped. So the Jews were left as a wandering people who were both feared and despised and carried death taint stigma. So they have the fear of death. So with this Christianity hostility towards the Jews. So Christianity has improved in Jewish community, and many people were following the Jewish community. So this is what the history when you talk about the ancient period. So the first when you talk about the dispersal of Jewish community, it started back in 1586. That's before the birth of Jesus Christ, when empire invaded into Jerusalem, destroyed famous Solomon's temple and the holy site of the Jews. So the first record happened, the crucifixion of the Christ. And as a result, Jewish community and its leader declared the rebellion against the Mesopotamian Empire in 1597. So this is what the history, and this is where when they destroyed the particular temple of the Jewish community, the famous Solomon's temple, then they started a kind of war in the country. So he killed the the Zebedee's sons before his eyes, blinded him, and took him to the prisoner of Babylon. So this is what the fight and war that is going between the Jews and other community. And we have this. It was in Babylon that Jews religious leaders like Jeremiah, Ezekiel created religious and intellectual favor. So Isaiah, another Jewish leader, exhorted Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the Jewish temple. So this is what happening in the immediate after the death of Jesus Christ. And the new religious laws were stringent and made exonus marriage prohibitive and asked its followers to follow strict purification and dietary regulation. So this is what the condition that is prevailing. Then many Jews as well practices that we see today, it is not in the way back. So they are very highly religious and they have kind of diet system, and they were more worshipping the god. Okay, they didn't take the Jesus Christ as the main picture in their religion. Just he is one of the prophet like Moses, and the fate of Jews and the city of Jerusalem alike depend on the dynasties ruling. That means one person is ruling the Jerusalem, and so this lot of rebellion, various rulers has come, and during the that earlier period of 70 CE, after the death of Christ, when Jerusalem was going through a tremendous falls and war in their country, and Babylon was slowly emerging as a kind of corner place of the Jews' thought and theological learning and intellectual life. And Babylon, where the Jews communities in Asia Minor and Alexandria and Antioch were thriving the foreign lands. So they are pushing go to the foreign lands and emerging there uh, and their ethnic community. And when we talk about the uh, uh, when we talk about the Jews as a victim diaspora, so when we say why we call the Jewish people as a victim diaspora it's because of the why they were uh, going to other nations. It's by dispersal following a dramatic event and in the homeland in the case of Jews, so that we call them as a victim diaspora. As we have discussed, there is a lot of war, and during and it is they believe in the Old Testament. They still believers of the Old Testament. They don't believe in the New Testament. That means the birth of Christ and after Christ and the Gospels and everything. So it was characterized because they were characterized as a victim diaspora because of the greater brutality or the murder or mass killing of the Jews that happened in the during their time. And uh, it all began when the people when the Roman Catholic has come to power. Okay, so the mass they forced the various countries to converge, and Pope Urbanus exhorted Christians to launch a crusade to reclaim the Holy Land of Jerusalem in 1095, in the year 1095, and forced. Okay, there is a mass killing, and in 1096, within 1 year, anti-Jews sentiment has already spread to the larger part of Germany and other European countries within 1 year, right? So the Crusaders ran over larger parts of Europe. So these people, those who want to convert, those who want to uh, make all the people into Christian religion, they started moving towards the European countries and German across. So they either converted Jews to Christianity or killed them whenever they encountered them on their march towards Jerusalem. Okay, so when they were moved to the Jerusalem, they tried to convert or they killed the people. So at some 10,000 Jews were put to death in a Mainz Rhine Valley, where They were all sophisticated. They put in the room. We might have learned, we might have know the history that when uh, uh, during Hitler war, what he had done, he put all the Jews into a particular room and without air circulation. They were all sophisticated and they were all killed that way. So the cruelty was very very heavy, and there is no kind of humanitarian ground. So killing also is not just like shooting or something. There is a cruelty in killing. So that was happened during that 1099 and those years, and as of the fire of hatred spread to other parts of Europe, Jews were expelled from England in 1290, from France in 1306, and subsequently from Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Poland. They were all scattered, and they were all moving from one country and to another country. So those who remained behind had to face the hardship and were discriminated against. So they were very, very discriminated, and they were forced to convert to other religion. So they were asked to wear a Jew's hat as a mark of their segregation from the common Christian population. They have to wear a hat, a Jew's hat, where it is the simple that they are not from the Christian community. So, in order to mark of their segregation, so the terrible fate was waiting for a separating Jews in Spain and Portugal in the meantime, as they fell easy victim of uh, in the late 15th century. So when this called Spanish Inquisition was targeted against Jews and Muslim alike. To avoid persecution, many of them pretended to be Christians and were identified as Christians. Okay, so during that time, had 1 lakh to around 1,50,000 Jews had flee Spain because of brutality launched by in that kind of Inquisitor General, and who himself was the Jews' descent. See, the Jews were appointed as a inquisitor general, means that he was the one to take care that these people are converted to the Christianity, but he himself by birth is a Jews, but he was appointed as a general, like a general army, and he started doing it. If it is not, then he all the people were expelled from that particular Spain during that time. So what happened? Some of them went and settled down in Poland and other land, and later migrated to Russia in 16th century. So, however, this amidst this violence, killing, and massacre, there are some relief for the Jews in Protestant Europe. When we understand the history, Protestant, they are protesting uh, uh, the Roman Catholic. Okay, so there is some misconception against the particular religion itself. They called a Protestant, means that they have come out of the beliefs of the Roman Catholic religion, and they started Protestant. So, for example, in Roman Catholic they worship Mother Mary, but these Protestant were against it. So this is a split that happened in the Christian community. This benefited the Jews community in return. So what happened? The relief for the Jews in Protestant Europe, where they took shelter and prospered. Okay, so that they were able to settle in Europe. So what happened where their trading skills, transnational mercantile connection has happened. So this push factor of this war and everything has made them to fight, become the lot of resilience they have developed. And in England, despite some political opposition, the Hebrew scriptures were translated and became popular as the King James Bible. Right. So Hebrew is the language where Jews community spoke. Even Jesus Christ has spoken uh, the language called Hebrew. Hebrew is the language of Jewish people, and Jesus belonged to Jews, and he even spoke the language called Jews. So this is what the history of the ancient time. And we need to understand the Jews as a learning objective. As explained, the Jews, Christianity, and Islam. So when we talk about the to understand the uh, Jewish diaspora, it is important to understand its relation interaction with the both uh, both Christianity and Islam. As we learned earlier, to escape Spanish Inquisition, a good number of Jews had fled to the Middle East in the 15th century. So, in fact, Jews and Muslims both faced the prosecution under Christian crusade so much so that no single Muslim was left alive within the city wall. This is what written. I reiterate, in fact, Jews and Muslims both faced the prosecution under Christian crusade so much so that no single Muslim was left alive within the city wall. Means that they went to that level of cruelty that no Jews or no Muslims should live in their city. So, with the arrival of Muhammad and Islam in the Medina in early 622 CE, there was a there was a mass exodus of Jews from Middle East, and those who were left behind had to accept inferior status and the newly converted Muslim populace. So it is commonly presumed that the relationship between Jews and Muslim was not hostile, if not cordial, till the Jews settlement in Palestine in the early part of 20th century. So there's not much problem with the Jews and Muslims, but if not cordial, the Jews settlement in Palestine in the early part of 20th century. But there are ample examples of the violence or power play between the two communities before 20th century. So, with the formation of this Palestine, the two religious groups had settled down for a peaceful coexistence. But Jews and Christians were accorded as inferior status as compared to Muslims and were called dhimmi or dummy. Okay, so this were more of Muslim population. This two population of Christianity and Jews were considered as a kind of inferior status. As a mark of discrimination, they were segregated from general Muslim population and they were asked to fix wooden images of devils on their house where yellow card. Okay. So this is what in Muslim community where this high population of Muslims were there and this is where they practice. So the pact of this, however, to mark their secondary status, they were barred from riding horses. Okay, they should not. The Christian and Jews should not ride horses, bearing arms, and were not allowed to build new churches or kind of worship area for the Jews community. So, in a legal dispute, the words of Muslims were given precedence over that of Jews and Christians. So, when the legal disputes happens between the Jews and Muslim, or the Christian and Muslim, what the Muslims were that precedence is given their words are taken in a higher level than the Jews and Christians. So the relative peaceful period nonetheless helped the Jews consolidate their position of, and many of them emerged as a predominant religious leaders, money changers, and bankers in Syria and neighboring countries. And this pushed them to enter into business. And the Jews and Christians under Ottoman Empire, that period from 14th to early part of 20th century continued to enjoy amicable relationship with the fellow Muslims. So that time it was very peaceful that was going on, and they were called kind of scripturists as traditionally believed in God and the prophet and the judgment day common features of three religions. Okay, if you take this kind of certain things like we go to heaven and even the kind of we see kind of the words in their Quran and Bible or Old Testament so are similar, and so that they have the common features like traditionally believing in God and believing in the prophet, and there is a judgment day where God will come and judge, and God will come, and all those things is a common belief in the Jewish community. Jews and Islam and Christianity, and and during the Ottoman Empire, you see that the Jews rose to occupy high public posts as a finance ministers and advisors to governors, and they do take a good place in certain provinces, and because of their knowledge of European language, local and trans-regional business practices, and their own networks, they become key players in trade. Okay, so they played a vital role in the provinces called Alexandria, Livorno. Some places we find the Jewish people. Jewish people are really good in trading. They do well, and these because of the skills and the knowledge on the language, uh, and they were able to take a good position in the during the later part of 12th century. And in the earlier part of 20th century, among these three religions, witnessed a renewed trend in Jews from Central and Eastern Europe coming to Palestine and settling down under the new Jews National Fund dispensation. And they had established network and were determined to uh, resolve the Jews' problem of having a homeland. So they need a homeland. Okay, that was their problem. So they took the Palestine and they become the homeland. As a result, the population of Jews in Palestine rose 85,000 in 1914, which was 12% of the local population, despite strong opposition from the ruling Muslim the locals and elites. Okay, so they took they consider themselves as the homeland is their Palestine, and they rose to 12 percentage. And in spite, they had a problem with the Muslim community, who are the major in Palestine country. And when we talk about the demographic distribution of the uh, uh, right, when we need to understand the demographic distribution of the Jewish diaspora, we see that in US the population of Jews in various countries, we have according to 2017 census, in your learning material also you find there are almost the US has the number of Jews high, almost uh, kind of 64 lakhs something around the Jewish community. In Israel we have 60 lakhs. So that you see now US strongly support Israel for various reasons, because it has a lot of migration from the Jewish community. And Israel, the next, and France has around 4 lakhs, and Canada has around 4 lakhs, and Britain and Ukraine has, and Hungary has almost 50,000, Brazil. So these are almost 12 countries population is listed, where you have a quite number of good population in these various countries. So, excuse me. So when we learn that Jews migrated to various parts of the world over the course of countries, we find that the history that the Jews who were known for their business and entrepreneurial skills where would help his empire in increasing the trade between the Middle East and bring prosperity to his kingdom. So that was the first thing, where how the Jews uh, ex, bringing their expertise in developing the country's trade. So that's this is a way how they supported their host land, even though they are victim diaspora. They use their skill in doing it. And when we talk about the Central and Western Europe in the 8th century, and the government itself is an instrumental in encouraging Jews to settle down in their territory, okay, in their places, and so that which I have told you, the various population of the Jews in various countries, we find a lot of people. And uh, when we talk about the Jews merchants who came settled down in Charleman's empire, also helped in nurturing its rich tradition of Jews religion. So what happened, they first involved, we should understand the Jewish diaspora. When they follow as the victims diaspora, they were forced, they went, but after a course of time, they were able to start their business, and they were able to form the ethnic community. Means that they were able to form their religious practices, they were able to start to function as a group in the host land. Okay. So when Russians invaded in 1985, the large number of them migrated to Europe and America and South Africa and formed the main stock of the population as they are known in the world today. And they started in forming a major group. Imagine the country like Brazil, Germany, Russia, they have almost 1 lakh, and Russia they have around to 1.75 lakhs Jewish people. A large number of them migrated to Europe, and when you see about the uh, kind of the Russian rulers were hostile to Jews. They were able to accept the Jewish community, and later were considered unreliable and threat. Okay, in the start they welcome the Jewish community, and then they become starting the rebel against them. As a result, some 100 Jewish communities had to face the brunt of the spring and instigated by anti-Jewish sentiments. So the country has started the anti-Jewish sentiments. So restrictions were imposed on the educational and economic growth. So there is no reservation, or they are not permitted into schools, and economic growth were restricted. And Jews were mandated to enroll in military service, and heavy penalty was imposed on those who not following the condition or rules or the program set for them by the Russian government. So the what happened in 1897, the half of the Russian Jews immigrated to Europe, America, and to the Palestine on the call of Zionist movement, where they were formed a dominant political class. That's very, very important. The Zionist movement. So the movement has started, and they started welcoming the Jews community. So those who remained Russia were continuously hunted by the people, or discriminated, or they were killed by the hated sentiment which were prevailing in the country. So when we see in the other parts of Europe, the Jews of France were well placed because they over the period had accumulated wealth and become socially and politically powerful, and had contributed significantly to the literacy and literature intellectual life of France. So that the Jews were able to establish a good settlement, and able to accumulate wealth, and become socially able to live, have some status there. And when you say uh, the condition in France was support is, for example, France and was supporting the charges. French Jews went ahead and got its people released when the France was against the Jewish people, because the Jews were able to uh, 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 kind of was. Influence the government, influence the thing, because in France it's totally different, because they were able to accumulate wealth and they were well settled, not only in terms of economy but also socially and politically. They were able to have a soft influence on the government, and they able to give their suggestions or they change the rules according to them for their well-being, as well as in when the charges were against the Jews and they were able to influence and get the people. You imagine when the history in the beginning, when the larger population or the larger religious community words are taken as for any kind of judgment. Now it is totally changing because they were socially and politically are able to influence. So as Jews were dominant players in commerce and banking and finance, they were accused of monopoly. That's again the France government as them. And because the monopoly is the one where they have only power on certain areas. For example, if you say monopoly in they started the banking and commerce activities and everything. So there emerged a misconception that Jews were part of global conspiracy and geoparadise France national interest. It was this perception that led to anti-Semitism in the 19th and early 20th century in the Europe. In in a lot of movement and further consolidated France and they started against started taking the rights of the Jewish community and violation and discrimination started place against the Jews. So the anti-Semitism incidents in Russia, France, and Britain, and other parts of Europe, convinced Herzl that all attempts of Jews to assimilate with the local people were doomed to fail, and they are not able to establish or they are not able to run the trade as they were running. So the impact of 1920, the U.S. economic dispersion was felt across the Europe, and the scarcity of economic resources further increased the ethnic tension, leading to anti-Semitic feelings against the Jews who were led by large, prospering community. So Nazi in Germany and communist Russia began using the opportunity to prosecute Jews. So that's what happened. So initially they were welcoming, and after that they were emerging as a monopoly in the sector of business and the commerce. And due to that, the country is imposing and through laws, and at the same time the war is against them. They started discriminating and they started forcing them to leave their country, and their mass prosecution takes place, so that the Nazi Germany or communist Russia has taken place in order to prosecute Jews on the pretext of impending threat, and they began portraying the Jews as a double horned devils with a rumor that Jewish capital and Jewish Bolsheviks would take over the Christian Germany, right? So they have some conception. We need not to debate on which is true and which is wrong, but but due to their emerge as a monopoly, they started and they started prosecuting, means that they started killing the Jewish community, and the rise of anti-Semitism and Zionism. When you talk about this anti-Semitism is that it's a racial phenomenon first appeared in 1870s as a part of European nationalism when the so-called purity of races based on the new buzzwords. So Semitism, anti-Semitism means it is against purity. Okay. When you say caste or caste visa, we say that is a purity. Intercaste marriage, we don't. Most of the Indians won't allow intercaste marriage. It's because it is a kind of pure dilution of the purity. And Semitism is a dilution of purity because they want to have a purity of races there. So Jews race, black race. Okay, so this race should have the purity. So they don't want any kind of inter caste or inter races that take place. It's purely it's marriage system or something where the people should not get married or they should not study together and all those things. So this started in 1870s, which is also began the prosecution of the Jewish people because they were the inferior in any countries, and it was nationalist historian thing when coined Jews or the misfortune. Okay, thereby cementing the prejudicial and racial feeling against them. Subsequently, the concept of white in black is the same. And according to the misconceived ideology, the Aryans were considered to be racially superior to those belonging to Semitic Jews or Romanian, okay, who were the African. So Asian and Native American and Jews of Jews descent were prosecuted heavily. And as we learned earlier, the 20th century was a period of massive displacement of Jews all over the Europe. So they were fleeing to various parts like Russia and everywhere. And the prosecution take place in the Second World War. So while these developments were taking place, there were emerged another group called Jews who were religious and wanted to supremacy of other religion over the some countries. And despite this hardcore ideological underpinning, the Jews diaspora was also witnessing the liberal and reformative tendencies as a demanded for the homeland for the Jews was gaining ground. So they were starting aiming for to get the homeland for them. So in the early 1940, the famous person of Elmer Berger, founding the number of American Council of Judaism, put forth his anti-Zionist ideology when he said that the very idea of Zionism was an anti-national. So he said that the survival of Jews across the globe was proof of its universal appeal and accused Zionism and perpetuating fascist and racist tendencies by segregating the Jews from the rest of the world. So he wants, and he was the main person to form Israel for the Jews community, and he said that most creative and intellectually stimulating phase of Jews was diasporic living far removed from their homeland. So he supported heavily and started getting with the help Jews National Fund. He started getting the Jews National Fund in building the Israel. So neither any political elite of Israel wanted to lose the support of this diaspora, so they were the main source of material and political support. So the Israel was formed for the Jewish community. So the homecoming, the creation of Israel. When you talk about the creation of Israel, very very important, we should understand in terms of today how the why Israel and Palestine is having a fight, because Israel is of the think that the Palestine is their country because they were in the beginning merely 12 to 15 percentage of the total population were there. And the discrimination, atrocities, the racial feeling against Jews had their own consequences and lead to a Zionist movement amongst the Jews claiming their homeland in Palestine. That was the beginning. Okay, that Palestine is my homeland. That's what their argument. And why with the collapse of Ottoman Empire and the end of the First World War, the ground was ready, and the Zionism has already gathered and steam among the dispersed Jewish communities in Europe, Central Asia, and North America. They were all dispersed from there. And the earlier, because of the racial and political discrimination, Jews were barred from political participation in various countries. So, when in a political situation of various countries are not soothing for the Jewish community to live there. So much that despite living for decades and some cases of centuries, they were granted citizenship rights much later. Okay, when you see in US, they were given in the 18th century. That means 1789, they were given. In France, in the same year, same 2 years after, 1791, and Russia granted them 1917. So these or the citizenship when they were given. The turning point for the creation of national homeland for Jews came much later in the Balfour Declaration of Lord Balfour on November 1917, when the British withdraw from Palestine on May 17 on 1948. Okay, so the British withdraw from Palestine because they were colonizing the Palestinian country. So the Israel army occupied the land and proclaimed the state of Israel. The Western imperial powers in the meantime had failed to take into consideration the wide dissatisfaction amongst the Arab world in the general and Palestine in particular. So there is no much control on it. So this Israel army able to take control of the Palestine. So this is how the Middle East seeking refuge in neighboring countries of the Middle East, namely Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. They moved. All the people, those who are in Palestine, moved to this Syria and Lebanon when the Israel army took control of the Palestine. So the post-Israel and post-Zionism and new Jewish diaspora has formed in the Israel. Okay, so when we talk about the Israel, because it they claimed it's their homeland, and Jew army force they started in 1948 to claim Israel, and a year after India got independent. And when you talk about the post-Israel, so they have coined the new country for them. They started, and the state of Israel was formed with the financial help from Germany, as per Luxembourg or agreement or something. So Germany paid 3 billion marks as a war reparation out to Israel, and repentance from the what they have done earlier for the Jewish community. So they were given $3 billion. And the US and the Jews diaspora also helped by providing finances by lobbying with the economic powers. So the creation of Israel, however, is still contested, especially by the Middle East countries. So that America so supports the Israel even today. So they consider Israel as a kind of their homeland, and force they are able to practice their religion, and even the Christianity also, the church would neither recognize Jews nor would sanction their return to their homeland. However, with the US giving a formal recognition to Jerusalem as a capital of Israel, and by establishing the embassy there in 2018, has given a formal legitimacy to Israel as a sovereign nation. So US is acknowledging it. But the Jerusalem and the Roman Catholic is not acknowledging the Jewish community or the country of Israel so far. So the creation of Israel, however, was posed a peculiar problem to Jewish diaspora in other parts of the world, as it forced them to choose between the host country or the place of by birth in Israel. So the problem still exists, but they were able to uh, kind of homeland by forming the uh, Israel for their as their homeland, and they get the support of US, uh, Germany as their because they have given $1 million to form that country. So this is what the history is all about. The history of forming the Israel and the history of Jewish diaspora, and when we talk about the formation and everything. So this is very important aspect when we talk about the Jews community as where the initially considered as a victim diaspora after formation of Israel, and kind of as a homeland. Now they are voluntary diaspora takes place. So we this learning, because it's important to understand the emergence of diaspora. So it started from Jewish community, and this particular unit clearly defines the resilience of the Jewish community, their skill on entrepreneurship and business, in which due to this kind of prosecution in wherever they settle, they face some kind of stigmatization, discrimination, even of all those things they were able to establish because of their strength of entrepreneurial skill, knowledge, and etc. And they started getting the Israel as their country, but various keep political as a part or any kind of things. But initial from prosecution to till, they were able to, even in small numbers, able to uh, uh, show a lot of resilience, a lot of getting a lot of able to support and able to do some political influence and started. And this paper really is, I think we have learned how from the victim diaspora to how they move to voluntary diaspora. Okay, this is what our learning, and this paper clearly uh, gives us the wider learning on the perspective of how this diaspora community moved various parts of the country, and from the 4 BC, the majority how they were there, and the concept of diaspora becomes Jews' cultural identity and Jews' cultural identity and folklore. And even today, the Jews diaspora remains a testament to resilience, adaptability, and deeply rooted sense of community. So, how they were able to form their ethnic community, even though they are small in numbers. So, this where adaptability and resilience gives us learning of how this past and present, how they are. So I end my class here. Any questions you can raise? PPT will be shared through Sahayaraj. I stop here. Thank you.